Okay, let's maybe get started. People will come in. Huh? So, welcome today to the talk about not about cybersecurity. So, maybe you are in the wrong room. No, just kidding. The idea here is to bring you to a journey. What's important about cybersecurity? You have investments to make. Where should you focus it? So, my name is Lorenzo Bernardi, and the pointer is working perfect. So I'm head of security at NRB and chief security officer. I have lengthy experience in cybersecurity in general, mainly focused initially on red teaming, incident response, all the technical topics. So I've seen how attacker works during incident response cases, on large-scale incident response cases, small ones, and I also emulated those. So I use the attacker techniques. I touched a bit of everything in terms of security, as well as governance, compliance, identity and access management. And I really love to share knowledge. I think it's important. We are all in the same boat, trying to fight cybercrime. So knowledge sharing is really important. It's becoming more and more complex to be able to address the cybersecurity aspect. So the first thing is the digital realm that we see is evolving. It's becoming more complex. We have more and more compliance requirements for different sectors. It started with the financial sector, but now it's brought with, if you think about NIS2, if you think about GDPR and all those compliance. But doing compliance just to do compliance is not the purpose, right? You need to understand also why you do it. Digital transformation. We see more and more demand from customers of companies to go digital, to bring new solutions. We see nowadays with AI, which is a big topic, but you have other things as well, which also increases the attack surface, the things that you need to protect, the skills that you need to protect it. And evolving threats. Evolving threats, attackers are becoming better at what they do, and they start making attacks faster. If you see, we had a few examples, vulnerabilities that are published by the vendors. Within a few hours, they are starting to be exploited. Meaning that you need to be able to patch within that time frame, otherwise you will be compromised. So you need to be able to monitor that. So that brings a new ecosystem different than what we had 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. So here I will try to bring you to the different steps that I believe are important. If you want to, it can be if you want to get started, but if you already have cybersecurity on your agenda, that's also applicable. The first aspect is to understand what you have in terms of business, because cybersecurity is the first thing is to protect the business, not to protect the IT assets. The IT assets are just a mean to deliver business value to your customer. So IT is an enabler, and that should be kept on top of mind of everyone. If you have technical people, they should understand also the impact of what they do to the business, so they can also take the better decision. And the role of cybersecurity is to protect those assets, to ultimately protect the business behind it. So one of the first steps is to understand what are your critical functions, what do you need to deliver, and how are they linked to the assets that you have behind it. It's usually difficult for companies to understand the link between the assets and the functions that are used to deliver value to the customer. And I've seen it in numerous environments. For example, doing red teaming and noticing that you have Windows 2003 running, you ask, nobody knows where it is, and it's processing payment live in the bank. That happens. I even had it with a Windows 2000 machine. So, and they said, no, don't touch it. Good thing is the payload didn't work because it was Windows 2000, so it was a bit too old. But if I think of another case, incident response case, large-scale manufacturing company, they have plants everywhere in the world, and they've been breached. Ransomware, nothing is working, so they are losing millions every hour, they are not operating. Why? In the end, we identified it was a physical appliance, NetScaler, that was the entry point for the attacker, unpatched. So I asked the customer, okay, give me the logs, give me access to the appliance. Yeah, I don't know. What do you mean, I don't know? Yeah, we don't have the credentials. We don't know who put it there. So, I mean, you have a physical appliance in your data center exposed to the internet, and you don't know who manages it. So in the end, they just shipped it to us. We exploited it to get the logs. That was the entry point of an attacker. So it shows the impact of not knowing your environment can be a big impact to the rest of the business. Of course, the Netscaler itself is not the only issue, because that's the external perimeter. It means once the attacker was inside, they were able to compromise the environment. But that's at least the first layer of security, knowing what you have. So you need to understand also the impact an attack can have on your assets. If the server A is compromised, can it compromise other things? So think as a graph, an interconnection between the systems and the business. And see, okay, if you have an attack path, an attacker will follow some points in the graph. So you need to be able to understand your environment and how they are interconnected at all levels, including your data, the access rights to your data, and so on and so on. That's basics. Maybe you know it, but who really applies that? That's a question I've seen in numerous environments. People are like, yeah, that's basics, but yes, but do you do it? Okay, maybe start with the basics before going to advanced things that will ensure that you have the good foundation. And then prioritize. Prioritize because you cannot do everything at once depending on your environment. So start prioritizing what really matters to protect. So the second step, once you understand the business and the link with the assets, it's really to understand your assets, identify everything. If you take back the example of the Netscaler, make sure that you can detect shadow IT, so that you run scans, regular scan, you detect when you have unknown devices, you take actions on them to make sure everything is enrolled with your EDR, everything is monitored. And the mapping of the dependencies. Sorry, I went a bit ahead with with the text. That's what we have here. So the shadow IT awareness is really important. Next step is restrict the access. Once you understand everything, make sure that's basic principle, but least privilege principle. Ensure that if an account is compromised, only the access that that person is entitled to have are compromised. Most of the time, we see a lot of people with numerous access rights, remnants of previous work that was done in the company when they moved to another position. You can see, for example, domain admins that connect with domain admins users to any machines to administer it. It's the worst case as well. Huh? If you connect with a domain admin on a laptop, the laptop is compromised, then it's game over. So think about making sure that the rights are built on purpose. If you have administrative rights, you segregate it from the regular rights. But even the regular rights, think about the business impact of an access to an application or an access to some of the data. Because maybe it's just a file share, but that file share can have a huge impact because it's M&A information or as the IT people will not maybe understand directly the impact on the business, and we go back to the link with the business and the IT assets. Huh? Next one is the exposure of the services. Huh? Try to restrict as much as possible the administrative interfaces. So if you need to give access to an application, make sure that the only thing that is exposed to the entire company is just the port to access the application, not the administrative ports. I've seen it also in numerous places. You have administrative ports even exposed to the internet because you don't know your assets, and then you don't know also the access rights and what is exposed. And we see nowadays, in the past, we were thinking of security as a bit as a castle. No? You have to defend the perimeter, and if the perimeter is safe, then you are safe. It's no longer the case. It was never the case, actually. But it's nowadays no longer the case neither, because you see more and more people doing teleworking, so it means you expand your attack surface. And you should always consider that your internal environment will be breached at one point. An attacker will be in. So if somebody is inside your environment, how can you make sure that it's also protected as you would protect the external perimeter? If you have questions, if you want to interact, please don't hesitate. Next step, protecting what matters first. We see more and more needs to invest in different tooling, different aspects of security. But what really matters is making sure that you invest the budget that you have. The budget is usually limited because companies see cybersecurity more often as a cost than as something necessary. And with what you have, make sure that you start with protecting what matters to the business. One really important point, make sure you have immutable backups. I've seen numerous times ransomware cases where the backup systems are encrypted because the attacker will go first for the backup systems. If they are connected, if they can be tampered with when an attacker gets access to the general environment, that's really bad because it means you lose everything. If you just rely on that, that's game over. How do you get back to business if your backups are compromised? So making sure that you have a third copy that is immutable, that cannot be touched, even if you have super admin rights on your general environment, that's one of the first thing you should do. And it's the case for big companies, but also for small businesses. Small businesses, that's even worse because that's usually the only thing that you have. You don't even have a physical copy from a few months old or anything because you don't think about it. You say, okay, I have a NAS, I have my backup, that's fine, I'm safe. Yeah, but if the NAS is connected to the rest, that's, yeah. I've seen it numerous times as well in ransomware cases where the backup system were compromised and you had to find that old tape or hard drive where you have a backup from a few months old, but it means that you lose the business data for that period. And to recover from that, it costs you way more than if you had the correct backup system in place. And last but not least, make sure that you can recover quickly. So train your recovery plan. Making sure that you can restore quickly your backup. And if it takes you 3 or 4 months to restore your entire environment to be operational, that's bad as well. So you need to make sure that to train every once in a while on a recurring basis the restore of your data. Who has an immutable backup here? Just nobody? Nobody does immutable backup? At least one person. Okay. Yeah. Next step, once you have the list of your assets, make sure that you can monitor what's happening. Yeah? We see that the time to detect breach is usually really long. And if you leave an attacker in your system for a long period, they will have the chance to make a big impact. If you're able to detect it upfront and in a few minutes react to it, then you can really reduce the impact it has on your company. So make sure that you have a monitoring of at least your identity system, your network, access to file share. Make sure that the monitoring is also linked to your business values. So the use cases that you make should be linked to what you want to protect. You have generic use cases that are good for the general attacks, but you have also use cases, for example, somebody random accessing the finance share or things like that can be really valuable because that would detect an abnormal behavior and that will allow you to see, okay, is it a compromised account from an employee that has been used, or is it an insider threat, somebody trying to get information, maybe before getting fired? We've seen it a lot of time. So monitoring, that's really one important thing there. You need to be able to react swiftly and to know what's happening in your environment. You have at home an alarm system to see if you have thieves coming in. That's the same with your system in IT environments. You need to make sure it's tuned correctly. And with monitoring comes incident response readiness. So making sure that if an event happens, you do something with it, right? If your alarm rings and you don't do anything, okay, what's the point to have monitoring? So making sure you have the correct playbook set in place to be able to react. For example, what if I have a phishing email? Do I analyze it correctly? Do I block the account? Do I ask the people to change their passwords? So making sure that those steps are at least defined, that's the first step. And next step, if you can automate it. Some of those actions can easily be automated and save you a lot of time. That's the basics, but that we do the containment of the attack. That should be trained as well. Usually you do that when you do a red team assessment. You will train the team that is doing the monitoring. So the team that is defending is not aware of what's happening. You will have the red team that will come in and that will do the same things as an attacker would do to test the defense mechanism. So when you do a red team, you don't test for vulnerabilities. That's not the idea. You test if the company is capable of detecting an attack and reacting swiftly to it and blocking it. But that's really important to train that, to test that. If you have monitoring, it's not trained. Yeah. When a real attack happens, that can be less efficient. Training, that's really important. So, first people that you need to train are your employees, because they are the first level of defense of your company. People using the computer on a day-to-day basis, if they know how to spot phishing emails, if they know how to spot something that is weird, and they can alert your SOC or they can alert the person responsible for security, that's the better monitoring that you can have. Huh? So by training your people and making sure that they can be aware of cybersecurity and they can react to it quickly, you really enhance, without too much investment, your level of security. If you do a phishing assessment, what matters is not the number of people that clicked. What matters is the number of people that will report it and how fast they will report it and how you will react to it. You can make a phishing assessment with 10,000 people. Huh? If you have a few people that detect it in a few seconds and report it, and the SOC takes action, the attack is blocked directly. If you have, let's say, 90% that doesn't click on it, but nobody detects it, and the 10% will click on it, then the attack will still go on if nobody reports it. So it's also a matter of defining the KPIs and what you want to assess in terms of awareness. The click rate is one thing, but the reporting rate is really important. And then the cybersecurity culture, I split the two, because the first one is for everyone that is doing making use of a computer. But the other one is people that are building systems, that are setting up servers, that are developing applications. That's not their core business. That's not their main focus to do security. But that should be, to at least keep it in mind. Like, you want to make your system efficient, you want to make sure it's safe, so including security by design. So train your developers, your IT administrators, your network team to make sure that they understand what are the type of attacks used by attackers and what are the risks of doing this and that in terms of decision. So if I configure it like that, okay, but that might be an issue because I remember that that can be abused in that way. And that can be done through training, but the best idea is also to do it through regular pen testing. If you do pen testing, you can spot vulnerabilities and you can explain people. So when you do pen testing, make sure that you explain people why it is a vulnerability and how to fix it, really making sure they understand it. I've seen a lot of pen test reports presented where we say to the people, okay, it's bad, and then they just follow the recommendation without understanding it. That's not the idea. The idea is making sure that people are aware so they don't reproduce it again. We've seen a lot of pen tests where you do it and then you see another application, then a few months later they do the same mistake again and again. That's not valuable. Last but not least, make sure that you have good partners to work with. So it's difficult to have all the skills that you need in terms of cybersecurity in-house, except for big companies, and even so, that's always difficult. That's so complex. You need to know the full field of IT, and not only IT, because you have governance, you have legal, so that touches everything. So making sure that you have trusted partners that can help you with specific skill sets is really important. If we recap quickly, so the ecosystem is becoming more and more complex with needs from the business to go with new technologies, meaning bigger attack surface, and the threat actors are becoming better. So you first need to understand your business and how it's linked with the internal assets that you have, how it's supported by them. And then with those assets, you need to make sure that those assets are known to you, all those assets, and you know the interdependencies. Making sure you protect them, internal and external perimeter, and that you don't give more access than needed. making sure your critical data and assets are well protected from attacks, including specifically ransomware, because we see a lot of those. So make sure that you have a backup that cannot be touched of your data. That's your last resort. Okay, maybe your data is leaked, but that's really important. Monitor everything, and start with training your employees to be able to monitor it and to include cybersecurity culture in your company. And finish by making sure that you have as well great alliances, great partners to work with. That was a short talk, but the idea was really to get back to the basics. I will see more and more talks on a lot of specific topics. I wanted really to get back on what I believe is important based on experience and what I've seen. And those key points may seem basic, but that can really help in case of an attack. That can really defer a lot of those attacks. Any questions? Any life experience you want to share? Nobody? Was it interesting? At least. Thanks.